Oh my God. I still can't get over that.
Eventually, we'll upgrade it over time. Anyway.
What's up?
Dude,
Welcome back.
wait. Sorry for interrupting. I'm just kind of curious about Freight Gone Friday. Reed, how's Freight Gone? I mean, not Freight Gone Friday. How's FreightGone.com going?
We still get a couple dozen people a day ringing the gong. The database is foobar, as you might say, fucked up beyond all recognition. Barely loads. We've got some work to do to it, but we've discussed. Jake and I have discussed revisiting it and maybe potentially coming up with a 2.0.
Are we gonna automate gong somehow?
I don't know. I mean, if we can automate freight brokerages, we can automate the gong. So we're gonna figure that out.
Very nice.
But yeah, no. I mean, the gong. I was at this. It's a long acronym, so forgive me if I butcher this. But basically, the Phoenix Transportation and Logistics Club. I was at a get together last night, and I had a bunch of people talk to me, tell me that they had rung the gong that day, and I was like, "Let's go." So I think people are still, you just never know when you're going to need a gong, and a lot of offices aren't providing gongs these days. Like, times are tough, margins are thin, gongs are expensive, and this one is free. So there you go.
I really want to. I mean, I get the significance of the gong. I started in the big box brokerage like everybody else, but what is the website? I'd love to know more about it. I'm about to visit it, but I don't want to get distracted.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally this. You just Christian, click it for us, baby. Let's go.
I'm gonna hit. It's me. Just hit the gong, or I'm gonna hit the gong. Just be careful. It's gonna be loud.
So you literally, yeah. I mean, you just ring. It's a digital gong, man. We got a leaderboard.
Nice.
Yeah, and we have some sponsors up there. The leaderboard is busted, because people were spamming it, and it just made our server unusable. So anyway, yeah, no, the gong is one of my finest inventions, I think, actually.
Very cool.
If I had to announce what I'm most proud of, it might be this. So
anyway. So Paul, candidly, I didn't know Reed was joining us. And I'm obviously, as you know, I was a huge fan of you before we even had a chance to meet. I'm a huge fan of Reed. And so I'm probably going to laugh at everything he says because I find virtually every one of his posts.
Reed is the funniest guy I know.
All right, well, I'll reciprocate. I'll laugh at everything you say too. So
I'm not that funny, man. So please don't.
Well, maybe Mikhail's saying something serious, so you don't want to laugh at him all the time. Maybe not laugh at him. Maybe he's probably more serious, so you don't want to do that.
All right. I'll try to use my brain then. No, dude, it's good to meet. Yeah, it's cool. I'm
for sure.
I am. Yeah. Let's. What are we doing here? Let's get this show on the road.
Yeah. So
we got millions of people watching us.
Yeah, for the millions of people that are watching us, just real quick, I guess intro here. We're going to be discussing the automation of freight brokerage. When do people in the logistics industry think that freight brokerage will be automated, or if it will ever be automated? And just kind of hit up on some topics like who's kind of working towards automating freight brokerage. I think it's going to be an interesting, insightful conversation. And this whole, live debate came about because we interviewed Anthony Fecarotta, who's currently working on getting his webcam set up. So shout out to Anthony. And then we did an interview with him a couple months ago, and Mikhail reached out to me. He was like, "Can I debate this guy?" And I wasn't sure if he meant to debate Christian or Mikhail. Mikhail, you said you debate either one of them about the automation of freight brokerage. And I think it's a hot topic right now, and I think there's a lot of different views, but each view is backed with some kind of sound knowledge or kind of insights that could be helpful for everyone that's listening in. So we're gonna have a debate. This is the first ever Freight Gone Friday debate about the automation of freight brokerage. So Mikhail, I guess before we begin, can you give our audience an introduction about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mikhail Rasner, I own MiRUnited, which is freight brokerage, formerly standalone freight brokerage, now freight brokerage agency. We went to the agency model and teamed up. And side by side, I'm partners in a company called Triton, which is our asset side. We own big warehouse, 250 trucks down here in Miami. My day-to-day these days, I started out, as everybody else did, big box brokerage, moved to freight, worked my way up. Now as an owner, I'm spending most of my time selling and dealing with the more complex solutions, we'll say. They're mostly problems, but you guys get it. So
yeah.
Brief intro.
So I actually don't know where you stand, just at a high level. Like, which side of this do you actually stand on? Because I think when we were talking and interviewing Anthony, he was more so on the side of like it's not going to happen for a while, if at all. I think he agreed that to some extent it might happen eventually. So which side do you stand on? I'm assuming I'm presumably on the other side.
Well, interesting because he's very much in the middle of it. In due respect to the debate, we actually got together yesterday and talked for about an hour about just a variety of things. But we wanted to actually make sure that it wasn't just going to be this, totally agreeable thing where all we're doing is agreeing with one another and that kind of thing. And I think both of us do. I mean, I think you'd be crazy to say, "Hey, there's no innovation that's going to happen." I mean, it's going to occur. Yes, perfect timing.
Oh.
But I am far more conservative on if ever it's going to happen.
Got it. Okay.
And I think in some regard, and this was one of the things that we did talk about yesterday, and I don't want to get into like the semantics of what a freight broker is or what brokerage is and that sort of thing. But I think regardless of where you're on that spectrum, I think most of us as we come up, like we're not talking about the people that are in their first 90 days or even first couple of years that are moving some traditional domestic dry van type of freight. And I'm going to steal something that he said to me yesterday, which is the further you get away from dry van freight, that's where some of the margins really come through. But also that's where a lot of the problems do tend to creep in. And so I think the further you get away from dry van freight, the further you get away from any automation-able thing that can create within freight brokerage. So that's where I tend to stand on.
Okay. Interesting. And Mikhail, just to clarify, the conversation you had with Anthony yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay, so you two talked. Okay, cool. Anthony, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. As always, late. I guess you always have.
You guys hear me okay?
Am
I too loud? Too
You
quiet?
sound great.
Good. Is that a new studio
You
got
sound
there?
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you sleep at all, Anthony, last night?
Yeah. If I didn't sleep, I wouldn't be fucking late, would I? All you people telling me to sleep is what you get.
I didn't know you needed instructions. I didn't know you needed sleep instructions from us.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence, Anthony.
I'm sure I'm not even gonna respond. So
All right. So which side at a high level do you stand on this debate? Just so that before we go and dive into the details, and Paul will kind of like go through some of these questions that he put together. Which side of this debate at a high level do you stand on?
So it's funny when we talked yesterday. I'm like, this might be pretty boring. I think we agree on a lot. We make software.
What is that noise?
Is it the gain?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really loud.
So we make software and we broker freight.
Wait, what's going on again?
Yeah, how do you hear that? I don't hear any of that.
Really?
Anthony's got this crazy setup, and he's like the Wizard of Oz over there. He's trying to fucking figure out how to use all this stuff, all this gear.
I switched my whole setup, and now I'm like, I don't know how to work anything.
It works now. Like
It's been like that for like 6 months, bro.
Okay, Anthony.
Hey, one day you guys will be able to afford these toys too.
Maybe.
Probably not.
Yeah. Probably not.
Cool. So, Anthony, where do you stand?
Oh, I'm afraid to talk.
Did we just end this debate before it even started?
No, just let me.
So let me jump in.
Yeah, let me fix this.
I guess, but we were joking about how like it's funny, we do agree on a lot, and I think where Anthony tends to lean more into is automation's coming. It's coming fast in retrospect to how I feel, but we're still a ways away. There is
All right.
there's some decent gaps between his and my theory where I think there's a lot to be explored.
Okay. I'm really curious here because I feel like so Christian, you're going to be partaking in this. So it's going to be Christian, Anthony, Mikhail in terms of debating this. And it seems like Anthony and Mikhail might team up and to take down or try to take down Christian's thoughts behind this. But so I want to start with this question. And this question is actually something that I was reading about recently. Like Jeff Bezos often gets asked, like, what's going to change in the next like 10, 20 years? And he apparently likes to reply with like answering what won't change in the next 10 to 20 years. So I'm curious if like you're able to tell us, Mikhail, Anthony, Christian, one by one, like which freight brokerage tasks and responsibilities do you think will not change within the next 10 years and maybe even forever? So Mikhail, I'll let you.
Wait. Do I not get to participate? Am I not allowed?
You could read. You could if you want to. I mean,
all right,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Mikhail.
All right, Mikhail, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think, and I don't want to say things that maybe some other people are thinking. So let me just mention one that I think will change drastically. Payments. I think that one, it's going to move into some. This is one that I'm pretty optimistic on having some sort of automation around. I think one, freight's going to become prepaid in a certain sense. There's going to be deposits that are going to be put down. Two, I think we're going to move into you're going to deposit something in a centralized accounts, how that gets accounted for, whether it's open source, blockchain, however that works out. And then upon completion of the job, there's going to be some sort of automation or AI type style of accounting system that says, hey, you did the job based on the contract. This is what your amount is that you get for that. It's some range of 100%. So I think in the next 10 years, that's the thing you're going to see move the fastest.
Okay. So you answer the question, what will change, right?
So I didn't, that's my bad. Well,
no, you're good. You're good. We could put that as the question. Sorry, I'll make that the question.
No, that's
now.
My apologies.
You're good.
Did not read the question either.
So what freight brokerage tasks currently will become automated in the next 10 years or will change? So you're focused on the payment processing and invoicing, stuff like that. That's going to change. Okay. And besides that, you think that's like the main thing, or like is there
I think aside from some tangential tasks, I don't think very much will change in terms of how automation takes effect into freight brokerage.
I actually think that the original question was probably more because there are, at least in my view, there's a lot of different things that will be able to get automated, but focusing on the ones that, or if anybody can identify the things that we believe that cannot be automated. Like I think that the conversation will go in a better direction if we can actually
no, that's fair. And I have a plethora of that one, so for one example, I'll say right away, what will not change is the effect of how a client is sold. It's still going to be the entire, hey, we got to figure out who's making decisions at the paying level. How do we get in contact with him? And the effect of it has to be a sale made. That sale's got to be made in some natural organic networking. It's got to be through a cold call. Again, how that call is made, that may change. I'm not going to say so far as like, hey, phones and how we play an effect into that, but that aspect will not change in my opinion.
Anthony?
Trackers, they'll be done. You're going to see companies like Lean, Rapido sponsor. I think they're going to have to pivot a little bit more. I know they do more than trackers, but that's how they make their bread and butter. I think they're going to be gone. I mean, we don't use them. Like that's what software is. I said this before, probably on your podcast. I don't know why when the Silicon Valley money came in, I'm glad it did come in, but when it came in, I don't know why they tried to get rid of the carrier rep. Like they could say they weren't trying to, but ultimately, if you're going to automate the load booking process like that, load matching, you're getting rid of the carrier rep. I think I've said this before as well. I think carrier rep will be the last one to go if it all goes at all. But yeah, I think carrier rep will be the last man standing, and out of the main three positions or four: pricing, carrier, customer, sales, and then operations. And tracking, it's like I just don't get it. I think you just have one. If you're large, you have one person overlooking all the systems, of all your automation tracking systems.
So sorry, are we right now talking about what won't be automated?
I think tracking will be gone. Yeah.
I think he gave
What
two
won't-
examples. Like
yeah.
what will change is tracking, what won't change is carrier rep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, you want to update the question?
You like that?
Won't?
Bonus answer.
Yeah. So Anthony, what do you think won't change? So you said what will change? Tracking will change.
What won't change is sales. Customer sales will not change. And the driver, there'll still be drivers in the seats. We talked about this before. I think we're a long ways away. It's a subject near and dear to your heart, Christian, but I think we're a long way away from full automation on truck driving. Not the ability, but I'm talking more from legality, regulation.
I think it's actually more on an ability standpoint, at least on a
yeah. Well, you know more than I would on that. I'm not.
Yeah, it's on the national scale level. Yeah, but anyway.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in this market, it's this is a true test of your, obviously price is always king, right? But your relationships. I feel bad for any sales guy, customer sales guy, that spent his career being, very transactional and not taking, not building relationships with shippers throughout the years. I mean, there's a lot of guys I've known that over the years that have worked like that, and they made a lot of money in those markets. But this market's this down market's been a long time. I mean, it started March of 2022. We're in July almost of 24. I don't know how you can go this long without. I mean, I owe my shippers a lot. I've been working with me for a long time, and they definitely. I mean, we're the only thing more saturated than a freight broker is real estate agent and insurance salesman. So, yeah, customer sales will always be here. Sorry.
Gotcha. Okay, so more or less, you, Mikhail and Anthony, you guys are on the side for what won't change in the next 10 years is definitely going to be sales. I don't know, Reed, you have anything for the will/won't?
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't really have anything. I don't really have any nuance to add to that. I think. I think it's interesting to hear Anthony say that he doesn't. I totally agree with his statement saying that everyone basically tried to automate the carrier rep. Most brokerages, big kind of the big guys went and made their own proprietary kind of load boards, their own apps, and sorry, I don't know.
They all failed. You see,
Yeah.
Convoy. I mean, I hate to speak
Yeah.
ill of the dead, but Convoy is done. YRC put a bunch of money into it. CH put a bunch of money into it. All like Flexport.
I mean, I don't necessarily fault them for trying, because in theory, load selection, why would a carrier, why would they not be able to, at the very least, go and decide for themselves what loads they want for what price, right? And why would they not be able to press a couple buttons and receive a tender? But the reality is every brokerage had their own version of filters that determined what freight were surfaced on these applications, right? And that almost by default led to, in my experience, only the stuff nobody really wanted ending up on these apps, which meant that any carrier who downloaded the app, who you basically had to not force them, but you had to really try to hit up a carrier and be like, hey man, like, can you download this app? Go, you can look for freight on your own. It's totally self-service. You can use it to track loads that you can use it to update shipment info. You can use it to do all these great things. It's going to mean less check calls. It's going to mean you can just work at your own pace, yada yada. But as soon as they download that, they go through that process and they search for freight, and it's all crap. Like, they're going to churn. They're not going to go back.
Out.
They're going to just call. Right. They're just going to call their guy or their rep. They're going to call the woman they work with, or they're going to call the guy they work with, and they're going to be like, hey, what do you got? And so I think in theory it made a lot of sense for them to try that, and I'm glad they tried it, because I feel like we learned a decent amount.
We didn't learn shit. I wish, but and like let's just, in the spirit of debate, I actually have an opposing thought. I do blame them for trying. I blame them for trying for a few different reasons. One, because I don't have any personal connection to it. I don't have the money to do any kind of private equity, but the money they took in, claiming to know what they know, is pretty. I mean, it was malicious to an extent. I would say maybe not Convoy, but if you watch what Flexport's doing, these executives walked away with millions of dollars.
Yeah. I'm not even commenting on any of that. I guess I'm just purely looking at, okay, what would it make, like, what can we do right now? And saying, oh yeah, we should give carriers the ability to just self-service book. That in theory makes lots of sense. Like, I'm not talking about the billions of dollars they raised. I'm not talking about the money that founders were able to walk away with at the expense of, not maybe, I won't even say at the expense of their employees, but maybe. But like, at the end of the day, people, there's always going to be, there's always going to be capital seeking ideas, and that will necessarily mean capital flowing to stupid ideas. Like, you can't really have one without the other. So it's so easy in hindsight to be like, oh, well, that didn't work, and that was really stupid, and everyone involved is a moron. But when you're sitting there in 2013, 14, 15 with these ideas, like, and we're in a completely different kind of environment from like an interest rate standpoint, we're in a completely different environment from a capital market standpoint.
The cheap money's gone. I mean, that's
people
never
are
coming
going to
back.
try stuff, and this to I guess I'll say this one thing and then we can bring it back, but like, I think the more interesting thing to talk about in that domain, just in terms of culpability, is what effect did funny money have in the subsidizing of rates and the lack of profit motive? What did that do to the market, to the folks who were, I mean, normal people were catching, like, this had a terrible effect.
You're seeing what it did. Why do you think we're in the long? Why do you think the bad times have gone better than the good times?
So, subsidizing, like venture capital subsidizing losses on freight was horrible for that caused a lot of collateral damage, I think.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry, that's a topic for another day, because it's not related to this necessarily. But I guess just to put a bow on what I'm saying, like, I think it makes a lot of sense that they thought that it would be easy to quote unquote easy to automate, or that would be the lowest hanging fruit. I think I can see why that would make sense, but I agree. I tend to agree with Anthony that it will, if you had to rank order what would be automated. If you had to rank order what would be automated, dude, I don't even know. Like, I know for a fact, in my opinion, I guess that's not a fact, but it's a fact in my opinion, that the driver is going to be the last person automated, in my opinion. I think they're going to,
nothing else can be automated without it.
I think brokers are going to be automated before drivers will. And I think, so that's I feel very strongly about that. But anyway, sorry.
This is good, lively. I think, to just sort of counter that with one bit, which is I think it made sense. My counter to it, and having experience in finance, is like, it's kind of like this. Imagine if every fund that exists out there were to start competing for your 401k by selling the individual, like the individual consumer, on their ability to perform within your 401k. It would be impossible for any normal person to sit there and take in that sort of volume and make good decisions on it. We have which, by the way, I don't want to get into it, but I'm not pro regulation when it comes to a lot of trucking, but we have certain regulation within the finance industry to say, hey, like, you can't advise on this and you can't sell like to consumers on this. This is the person that has to do that, and that's that. And so to me, it's like we look at trucking. Part of the reason why I have a little bit of passion around is because I think a lot of this funny money came in and said, it's just trucking. We know better.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
in
there
reality,
was a lot there. Yeah. That's very
Yep.
true.
And so
exactly.
Right. And to me, it's like, you fucked our industry pretty hard. Sorry, Paul. You put our industry in a really, really bad spot. And to Anthony's point, like, thank God we are not struggling. I do some different business brokerage wise than most traditional brokers. So we've been in some really good spots throughout the years, but we've had some tough months. I can't imagine traditional domestic brokerage for the past 2.5 years and how that's gone for people.
It's been fun.
It's yeah, man. Yeah.
Anyway,
so Anthony, just real quick, I just want to give people some insight. So Anthony, you opened up your brokerage back in early of this year, right? Or was it late last year?
November 7th, we got our MC.
Okay,
We were
2023.
Yeah, it was funny because getting an MC, I asked a bunch of people how long does this take? Like, like 2 months, a month to 2 months, and I got it 2 calendar days later.
Yeah.
Because nobody's trying to get an MC right now for a freight brokerage, and I think they were just like, "Hey, are you okay?" But yeah, so November 7th was our when we started, and we're a brokerage, but we make our own software, and we will be licensing out. We'll be spinning off into a separate company that'll be selling software as well in 2025.
So Anthony, you were pretty bullish, or maybe not pretty bullish, but in the podcast interview that we did 2 months ago,
comments.
In the podcast interview we did a couple months ago, you were talking about all the tech that you're using and like the AI and stuff like that you're using to like automate processes, make everything kind of, I don't know, more efficient, stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing right now to incorporate some of that automation and AI into your brokerage?
So I like to say we're more of an automation company than a brokerage or a software company. As far as everybody puts AI in the name now, and it just drives me nuts. But the LLM piece of it is just to it's triggered by Google Maps API to tracking location. So without tracking location, that tech does nothing. It's a very heavy paperweight server. But it reaches out to a shipper or a consignee saying it's an agent just reaching out saying it's going to be late, and it can converse. It's really not groundbreaking. The predictive model for the Google Map predictive model is actually more complicated than the LLM piece. But more of the automation is, we see a lot of it on the Tech Bro Tuesdays, like a lot of these doc processors and stuff like that. So like, we built our own, I built my own, just using Vertex AI on Google Cloud, and then so that's how I built the first iteration of that. And then the hard part is trying to build it. What we're doing right now is take it off Google Clouds. We're building our own servers, and then doing what we were doing with Google, Vertex AI, doing it with an open source LLM. So when I just to dumb this down, when I say Doc AI, I'm talking about upload a PDF into a web app and then it builds a load instead of sitting there building loads. And I say, well, what about API? Well, not every customer wants to do it, So the customers that don't, when they send by email or by PDF, we could build loads like that. Other automation. So like I built a tool that if I get a Samsara or a Motive link or any link compatible link like that, we can type that into a web app, and then it will give us tracking updates based on the status on the web page. It's essentially scraping it, and then there's an API set up for our Slack, and then one for our TMS. So I mean, we still use trucker tools, but we would rather have two sources because, like I said, the tech the company's predicated on is based on tracking APIs. So if they're those down, then that's it. We're just, we're screwed. So we have anything. I mean, essentially, if I'm doing something, or one of my reps is doing something, and they say it's a problem, and we look for a tool to fix it, and the tool doesn't exist, I build it. That's it. Or if the tool's too expensive, or if the tool sucks, I don't know. We're go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to tie this back to the original question around like all this automation and AI. Like, we have a question like, how is it going to be helpful or to brokerages, for example? And I think the more that I think about this, I kind of separate it out in my mind, at least into two parts. It's kind of like, I think Mikhail and Anthony are right in the sense that sales is something that you have that interpersonal relationship, and you can kind of basically bring in business into this kind of system of operations. And that system itself is what I think that there should be like a delineation between those two concepts, where it's bringing in business to then be processed like those two things are separate, in the sense that the processes itself of actually moving that freight or identifying that freight, they can be independent of the relationships themselves. And so if I think about like, okay, how do like tech companies, like, software companies or anybody, they go about doing like marketing outreach, right? To go and try to get, new customers in the door, right? You can now automate a lot of that. And that's a separate argument about whether or not, how effective it is and so forth. But can you use perhaps both, right? And in the sense where you're doing kind of automated outreach, automated sales, and things are getting to the point where, for sure, over email, it will get to the point where if somebody like a shipper would want to interact only over email, which I doubt would have probably maybe ever happened, you probably want to speak to the person, at least in today's day. You want to speak to the person and know, who's going to be moving my freight. There's two avenues in which that can be done. One is like through a interface that gets made, kind of like a portal. You go to a website, and then you can basically book, say, hey, I need a couple loads to be moved regularly on this basis, right? And then there's another approach, which is you can go door-to-door sales, or you can go friend-to-friend sales, or colleague-to-colleague sales. And whatever you kind of bring into the picture, right? I think really what matters is how good your process is going to be, right? And I think that's really, at the end of the day, right now, one of the biggest differentiators between brokerages is how good is their process, how good is their customer service, how good is their, how do I feel about their reliability? Do they communicate with me? And so it's really that system that sits kind of like outside the sales. So that's at least how I view it. And that part, I think, and I can go into why, but I do think that part, the system and the operations itself, can be successfully done end-to-end in an automated way within 10 years.
I love what you said there. And just because I want to grab what you said there and kind of transition into that topic, is that okay? Can I interrupt you really quick? You mentioned right there, you said, hey, I think that operation is outside of sales. That's like, I think that's a perfect middle ground to where I think you and I tend to disagree on.
Okay.
So I ultimately, like, the way that I sell, sure, I make cold calls, and like we get a little lucky here and there. I'm an owner, so I can be like, listen, yeah, you got called by TQL and CH Robinson 25 times today, but the owner of the company hasn't called you at any time. And like that at least gets people to pause. But in reality, the majority of our clients are coming from organic, like shaking hands. I met you at the country club or at this event or whatever it may be.
Right. Daisy chaining.
Yeah.
Shipper or a customer of your shipper.
Yeah, right.
Customer
Yeah, of course. Right.
Yeah.
All the brokery places that we all visit from time to time.
But it's like if you got trailers dropped at your customer's vendor, you're like, hey, I got 20 trailers in your lot. You want to work directly, maybe? Which isn't always a yes by. Which is always a yes, by the way. It's somehow.
And so your sales, yeah, that's great. I got the sale done, but your cross sell ability. And even, again, Anthony and I had a really interesting conversation about coming up. When we first started, we both had a similar experience. started moving with a client. All of a sudden, they're like, we got a lot more stuff. And that sale doesn't come without your operations team having organic touches. And that's why I think like a lot of these automations that people are trying to, I don't mean you guys, I just mean there's a lot of marketing there. It's just shoving it down your throat. Like, do the EDI, do the API stuff. Like, just make it, send me the email. Like, no.
I mean, I think, APIs are, and we're not going down the EDI route today, but having systems, moving in unison, it's hard to argue against that. It's, I'll just give you an example, a CRM and a TMS, if they're not connected, then you're going to have, people are going to be calling on customers, calling on accounts that are already taken by another sales rep. If the systems aren't API integrated, you're not going to see that, that's just a basic bear down example. So I wouldn't, API isn't automation. API is a bedrock of building automation. It's almost a necessity.
It brings things together.
It's glue.
Right?
Yeah, glue.
But there's two different places that you're selling. So, and I still, to this day, I call contacts that was not the person that I sold, within. I've got my primary contact and I maintain that relationship, but he's got people underneath them, especially if the company is, we don't do a lot of contract stuff, but even the ones that we do, even those people have a lot of people underneath them.
Yeah.
Like, it's not this single point of contact, the traditional, that's what I was saying as far as like.
You never know, dude. Michael, I have a customer of 10 years, one of our biggest customers, and know the guy real well, grew up together. I just found out he had Mexico freight, and has always had Mexico freight, and I never knew, but I never freaking asked. So, and not a little bit either, like a decent amount. So yeah, it's kind of what you're saying. It's like you gotta, and they're a mid-sized shipper. They're not, so these like
those are the best clients
in this market. They are definitely the best for sure. But
I never built a freight brokerage. I was only ever on the carrier side. But if I were to,
you'll live longer than me.
So perhaps, but if I were to make an attempt at it,
the way that I would hit by a truck.
Hopefully not. Hopefully they have some safety systems. But anyway, if I were to make an attempt at building a freight brokerage, like the way that I would look at building that company would be that I'm going out and doing the selling, like person to like with friends, with trying to get meetings with shippers, and basically trying to convince them to utilize, our services, which are powered through basically an online portal, which I think at this point everybody expects to some point, like that they can go through a portal and
elaborate on that more. An online portal,
like an interface. Like if you're going to be moving my freight, like I kind of want a place to log into to kind of understand.
Oh yeah.
Right. So like that's pretty
interesting.
And
here's the thing: the mid-size shippers love those. The big shippers are like, dude, there's 100 of you. Like, I'm not logging into 100 fucking portals. Like that's so.
I think yes, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. However,
that's where API comes in.
One of the advantages I could see with AI being done is for those larger shippers, I could very easily see some company which doesn't as of right now exist, that basically kind of aggregates all of these different interfaces. Actually definitely heard of a company that raised they're backed by some really good AI researchers, and they're basically building kind of like this interface for all of these front end.
What do you mean, just like Zapier, basically?
Really Zapier on steroids, but it's for the front end of the world. So front end meaning
Zapier on steroids is end to end.
The browser page that you see, right? So I want to tie this back. I want to finish this and then kind of go back to the original point, which is there will be a company that allows you to aggregate all of your interfaces across all your different portals and have all that information basically visible in one area.
Called a 4PL. There's already companies that do that. I do that.
They wouldn't be specifically like logistics. This would be a generic piece of technology that could be used in any vertical.
And Christian, respectfully, it would fail, just like everyone else that's tried to do this.
I think it's being short-sighted. So like I was born in 88.
I mean pragmatic standpoint. But sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
So as far as like the LLMs now, like I was born in 88. I was so third grade. I was writing HTML by third grade. My grandma's introduced me to computers, which is funny. And then I was Visual Basic, and then C++. So what I'm getting at is I've been around for a minute, all right, and I stopped for like 20 years, and I got back into it a couple years ago. But I never would have seen, and I messed around with chatbots many years ago. They sucked, but I never would have seen I would have bet everything, and I didn't have a lot back in the day, but that we would not have the tech we have now. I would never thought we'd get this far. I'm not that open-minded, I guess. I'm not that that smart, I guess. But
look, it's not to blame though.
I'm very hesitant to say never on anything now.
Yeah, this stuff is complete. We've never seen anything like what is going on in this tech step.
I never thought I'd see a rocket land itself either. You know what I mean? Like
a lot of things.
Well, can we elaborate? What tech? I'm interested. I want to know what tech.
I mean,
yeah, sure. I can. I'll break it down. I'll break it down more or less how it will work. Right. There's when you write code, you can basically leverage different libraries or other pieces of code that other people write. And one of those pieces of code is open me up a browser. So the code will do that for you. And now when it opens up that browser, it can actually literally read the HTML on the page and understand where every component is, where every button is, where every input box is, where every text is, where every graph is, chart is, all this stuff, right? So now if you write a piece of software that all of a sudden you provide the login information for every portal that for which you have maybe 20, right? Now all of a sudden, this piece of software can now open up, let's say, 20 browsers for you, and you don't even know this.
So you're talking like a like a tiling manager is in Linux. It's kind of like
he's talking about Selenium, like the Python
we
library.
can't talk this high level.
I don't want to talk
those are all foreign words to me.
I just want to give you a sense of.
So I'm following Christian though. Keep going. I want to understand this a little bit better, and I have one question for you when you're finished, because this is very interesting.
Sure. Yeah, it really boils down to that, is that the software learns to read the HTML of the page. It can even potentially learn to interact with that page itself. So if you needed to click on something, there's no reason why it couldn't learn to interpret what on the page needs to be clicked or typed in to get a certain value. Right.
Can I ask a very basic question for you guys? Because we have. I mean, I don't care if we go a couple minutes over because we started late. But let me just ask a very simple question.
Why we start late?
Let me ask a very basic question. Why do freight brokerages exist?
Because
the truck market take risks off of the market is the simple.
Because like 90% of the trucks are fleets of like less than like 10.
Great.
That's why.
All right. So basically, what you're saying is freight brokers exist because capacity is distributed, centralized.
I would say that brokerages exist because they make shippers' lives easier.
Well,
I wouldn't necessarily say that either.
Okay, Mikhail, why?
You're right.
Very simply, why do they exist?
They take risk off the market. It's the same reason why you have 401k reps that exist. The exact same reason.
What does that mean in practice? What does that mean?
It means that if you were to try and do this yourself, you would.
That's Reed saying, "Dumb it down, please."
You would be taking far too much risk for the company, for yourself, wherever it may be. Just like if you were to do your 401k entirely yourself without fund families or the research that comes behind it, you would never be able to make any kind of real profit within a 401k.
And when you're
not a financial advisor, just like you're not a logistics expert.
And when you say doing this, you mean aggregate, like hiring fleets to move your freight?
I would say it's much more general. It's finding solutions to get A to B. That's it.
Okay.
When we get into the semantics of like, oh, we're booking trucks. No, I don't book trucks. I book flat. You know what I'm saying? That's when it gets a little too much. I think the easiest way to look at it is a company creates something. There's multiple risks, including supply chain risk. The broker is there to remove the supply chain risk from their plate and put it on their own.
Let me talk for a minute here. Imagine if the megas didn't have brokerages, okay? And imagine if you work for a decent sized shipper, let's call it $100 million freight spend, and let's say you had to build. Pretend you are the logistics.
You'd work with 7,000 asset
No,
carriers, and it'd be a nightmare on the accounting. It'd be a nightmare on the operations. It'd be,
Let's say you had a nationwide. You get it, but let me run it off for everybody. You had a nationwide footprint, okay, and you have to cover loads in 47, 46 states, 45 states, okay. Now you got to build this out, and you don't want to get killed on price. So you have to use only assets because brokers don't exist. Now, keep in mind, a lot of times when these people use assets, the megas are putting a lot of that on the brokers. So mentioned they only have trucks.
Yeah.
And you are gonna, I mean, you're gonna have so many loads roll. You're not gonna be like coverage. You're gonna be
okay. So there would be issues. There would be
blow
issues. This isn't this.
How would you find the guy that doesn't own a lot?
My question was not to try to move the debate. My question was simply to ask a general question that I think is missed. And because brokers are hyper zoomed in on their task as it stands right now. And I think people not as often zoom out and ask fundamental questions about, is the way things are now necessary given the current state of technology, or where we think technology is going to be in 25 years, right? Like automation, like all this AI stuff, to Christian's point earlier, is right now in other domains capable of insane things, right? We're seeing kind of early
kind of
whatever.
Yeah.
It's I can type into a thing, give me HTML for this page, and it'll do a decent job. And in a couple of years, it's probably going to be way better.
But here's hold on. Here's the question though: would you do that? And would you hit publish without review? The same thing. My test model for I review every statement that goes out first. You think I'm not that comfortable with it? No freaking way. So would you do full self-driving and close your eyes the entire time?
I understand what you're saying. All I'm saying is that my opinion is that it's brokers argue day in, day out for the legitimacy of their space in the market, right? To sit between carriers and shippers in the transaction. And I agree that there are a million reasons why they're there.
I don't know. Where's this argument taking place? I don't know about this argument.
Just what?
Who's saying brokers don't need to exist?
Anthony, hold on. Let read.
All I'm saying is that I think that whenever sea change technologies come in, it's worth just zooming out and asking, how does this actually affect the need to have brokers as they exist right now sitting between the transaction? You know what I mean? Like, how does this tech, like if today or tomorrow, given the current state of technology, let's say we just hit the reset button and every single freight brokerage didn't exist. None of them existed. None of them. Okay. And tomorrow we had to move all the freight and we had to build systems to do it. Would we rebuild the exact current way it is now, or would we reorganize things in light of the technology? And what would that look like in light of this automation technology? How would that? What would happen? What would happen? Right?
I don't.
We would create short-term decisions and make every short-term decision necessary to move the freight right there and then, and we'd fall right back into the same habits we're in right now. Humans do not learn from history that's been showed over and over. I think there's innovation that lets us move a little bit faster to that understanding. And I think if you see that, round and round a couple times, you're like, oh, okay, we just get there faster. And will technology come into play? Someone's going to be like, okay, some of this is just too much. To your point, yeah, they're going to create something, obviously. But, and this is where I was hoping to kind of be very general about this. Brokers are a general term. We just do logistics. There are people that do finance. There are people that do real estate and insurance and everything else. Brokers will never be gone. And I know that kind of goes to the sales aspect of it. But what I'm saying is it's the
they might be gone in real estate. I don't know. That might be one there. They're gone. Very
general term. And what it does is it comforts clients. It's That's simple.
Brokers will exist, but it's the question is, will the form change? Like we used to need to pick up the phone and call a stockbroker to buy a stock, and now you can press. You still are using a broker.
Okay.
You're still using a
Okay.
broker, but you're pressing buttons now.
I want to ask this question because I've heard this from venture capitalists a lot, and like ones I've talked to in like recent years about like when I had calls, and I heard this so many times from them. That it's like, oh, back in the day, you had to call a stockbroker to buy a stock.
Yeah,
and nowadays, you just go on Robinhood and buy a stock,
cliche.
right?
It's like, a cliche,
but it's like, all right, well, buying like a share in a company. One second, Mikhail, is so much different than like moving an 80,000-pound truck with a driver
100%.
across the country.
100%.
So I'm kind of curious, like how would you argue with someone like a venture capitalist that was like, well, this is going to be automated?
I would point at their track record, and then I would just.
No one is creating what's called an individual non-discretionary account out of their Rob. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but the guys on Wall Street Bets, which is less than 1% of total investors out there, yeah, they're doing that stuff. But back in the day, you were calling the stockbroker, and he had a good portion of your overall savings. The guys that are buying stuff on Robinhood are purchasing some fun stocks to play with a little bit of money, not the bulk of their savings. That's still done.
When they pulled that bullshit a couple of years ago,
financial advisor,
Anthony,
face
hold
to face. So go ahead, Anthony.
When Robinhood pulled that bullshit a couple of years ago, I canceled my account. Remember no, they wouldn't let what the hell was it?
GameStop.
They helped the short.
They halted the trade.
They wouldn't let you 100x leverage short GameStop on the Robinhood mobile app.
I wasn't even doing that. I actually purchased GameStop before all that and sold it before that started because Michael Burry, he wrote a whole. He's the guy really gives advice, but he said, listen, the next generation of consoles is going to have. It's going to be the last one. It's going to have discs. So and they have a lot of. As soon as the conversation gets intelligent, Reed's got to be like, "Fuck this! I'm done with the conversation." Hey,
well, that was the answer to your question. Though, was you asked how you would argue against that. It's apples to oranges. You're not really comparing the same thing. But if you look at traditional wealth investing now, it's still a face-to-face, Zoom to Zoom. There's your automation. Now your financial advisor can meet with anyone anywhere. As opposed to, hey, you got to come to my office at this hour, and that right there is the change.
I also look at it as between those two, and this is to Paul's question about. I would actually, to a VC, I would answer it as they are two different processes, and one is easier, in my opinion, to automate with existing technology up until this date, which is why it exists, why Robinhood exists. And you call the stockbroker. They would say, okay, how much do you want? The volume that you needed to, wanted to buy, the trade was executed, somebody would buy it, you needed to go through a clearinghouse. And then the paperwork was really easy kind of to do that because there's actually framework and structure around that because you typically would be trading at exchanges, right? And those brokers are then licensed at those exchanges. So there was actually a framework to make it possible for all of this to then be digitized and accessible through a platform. We don't have change for free.
Do you have do you have, I'm trying to say this without asking this question disparagingly because I don't mean it this way,
Sure.
But is that the conversation you actually think these people were having back then? Because that's not the conversation they were having. The conversation they were having is the same conversation that we're having, which is, no, trust me, I know what I'm doing. This is the right way to do this because it's going to help you achieve all your goals and dreams that we talked about. It's the same conversation that Anthony and I are having when Anthony's talking about a drop trailer project. No, this is the best way to do it. This is how many drops we need to make so that you can do it this way. I know this. I've done this many projects. This is why we need to go with MSC instead of Hapag because I've done this many times.
So Mikhail, that's a fair point. But then if that was the case where the conversations weren't like I just described them and they were more like the way you're describing them, then why is it that Robinhood exists, but we don't have a Robinhood equivalent for freight? Because
do you know what the average amount of money invested in an individual Robinhood account is?
You have to explain to somebody.
Yeah.
Here's like the armory of things that I'm going to give you in order to get this job done. Right? It's an actual job. It's multiple different components.
So you're talking about making customer sales retail, right? That's what you're getting at.
I'm not going this well.
It's a general term. Well, Christian, let me ask you this. This is the simple counter argument to that. The general account in Robinhood, do you know what the average amount is that people hold?
69 cents.
It's very low. I don't know the exact figure, but I did read it somewhere without quoting it because I don't know where I quoted. It's low. It's under 10K. Do you know what the average amount that the 1980s like stockholder held of one families? It was usually between 60 and 70% of their savings. So you're talking like in those dollars in today, you're talking 50, 60, 70,000. People aren't going and like they are. Yes, there are people with a lot of money, but I'm saying like there are not people out there with 60 to 70% of their investable assets in Robinhood. It doesn't exist on any kind of scale. So
we're digressing way much, but we're really digressing here. But people, when you buy a stock, you should treat it like going to the casino.
This is when Anthony says he has got 90% of his net worth in Robinhood.
No, I index funds. That's index funds. It's what Warren Buffett says. It's what everybody.
Another thing we agree on.
It's it.
Which index funds, Anthony? Which ones?
Oh, we are not providing financial advice.
This is financial advice, Anthony. What fucking index fund do I need?
The Bogleheads.
VOO?
John Bogle invented. He's the founder of Vanguard. Okay, there's a Boglehead, the entire community. That's how I set.
Dude, so I was investing in Vanguard for the last year, and like I realized that the Invesco
it doesn't have to be
QQQ
Vanguard index funds. It could be any index funds, but
dude, the Invesco QQQ investment fund is up 33% year over year. The Vanguard one ETF, like S&P 500, is up like only like 14%. So
we might need to reconvene on this.
It really depends.
Hey guys,
your employer,
can we do this again? We should do this like once a month or something like that. We should just because this has been all over the place. But that, like, what do you expect? Like, this is a very difficult thing to talk about, and we've never actually done anything like this on the show. So like, this is something that deserves just like a regular thing, because the more we do it, the better we might get at it, and we might actually be able to get somewhere. So I'm not surprised.
Hopefully, I know how to work my equipment next time.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is that these are all interesting conversations, and it's not surprising to me that it's difficult for us to like actually do it, because it is such a huge thing to talk about. So I mean, we should do stuff like this regularly, because we'll maybe make some progress. So that I'll just say that.
Are we wrapping it up?
Yeah, we are.
Well, yeah.
Before we wrap it up, cheap plug, kind of. Not really, but if anybody just watches this and you are a broker and you use no, not sure. Yeah, any freight. If you're a broker and you use My Carrier Portal and you use Slack, you have to have that combination. I created a bot that when you do the risk assessment for a carrier, you could just type in /MCP MC number, and you're going to get the full same UI, same screen in your chat, and you can review it as a team. You can send the invite from there. I'm open sourcing that code, and anybody can have it. So
yeah, I wouldn't
let me
buy
know.
that. Trust
Anthony, you have Mexico freight.
Yeah, it's free. It's free. I'm giving away just
I'm just kidding.
code.
That's great. Listen,
I'm gonna hack your website, sir.
We have 90 seconds. You can hack my website.
No, not you, not Paul. Well, you,
today about how somebody's looked at my website and they found errors and they would love to fix my website for me.
Oh yeah,
You
should definitely buy all those services.
Let's talk offline about your Mexico freight, because I have an asset on the Laredo and the Ensenada border, so we can help with that.
All right, let's talk.
All right, thank you, Mikhail, Anthony, everybody, for joining us. This was awesome. We will have these regularly. Clearly, it was really, really interesting. We'll see all you guys next week. So thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Pleasure to meet you all too.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.
See y'all.